You say when. Well, welcome everybody to our September Lunch and Learn in the Garner United Assisted Living Place building, which has just been sold over the weekend. So there's a huge amount of upheaval here because nobody really knows what's happening. And so I may close the door if there's a lot of going back and forth. Well, Firdosh Mehta is one of our original board members, one of our founders. He had lived away from Edmonton a long time, but we welcome him back with great delight. He's offered this talk because he and Marcia are here for a wedding. So the timing is good for us. I hope it is for everybody else. And our past president, Guy, is ill at home. So from there, he is going to give us a land acknowledgement. Guy, please.
Thank you, Netta. Thank you. Yes, just want to remind us about the place of Treaty 6 in our lives. And to start with, I'd say that for thousands of years, some say over 10,000 years, the indigenous people roamed this land and survived on this land with the aid of the buffalo and the plentiful produce from plants and small animals, and they did well. And then they noticed that immigrants were coming in by the hundreds, by the thousands. And they got worried because they didn't have free access to their land anymore. These people were settling and claiming a space. And so they along with themselves, they brought in disease, and they brought in guns that killed many of the buffalo. So the indigenous people were suffering from starvation and from disease and general deprivation of the freedom that they'd enjoyed. And they appealed to the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada for some consideration, and were granted a meeting, and they were given plots of land for their own particular groups. They were promised medicine and food and money and farm equipment, and in exchange for giving access to all the rest of the land that they didn't occupy. And the indigenous people didn't understand the idea of private ownership, so this whole relationship was a bit of a surprise. And that contract that they all signed was known as Treaty 6 for this area. And we've been dealing with the fallout from that particular contract for a long time. And we're still doing it, and we will be for a few years. That's it. I acknowledge that the indigenous people were here, and we kind of moved in. And we all have benefited from that Treaty 6. That's it, Netta. Thanks.
Please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for participating. Okay. So before you, okay. Today's topic I picked purposely as the non-Persian account of the two great Persian kings. And I wanted to say more about what others have said about us, so it doesn't look like I'm tooting my own horn. But it all started in my mind after reading this many, many, many years ago. And this is a picture that is this is Daniel's trying to talk to the Babylonian king at that time. And you see some writing on the wall. That is the way when our phrase today that we use, you have to see the writing on the wall. It comes from that time, okay? And this is the book of Daniel's prophecy. I do not know how much kind of the prophecy in details, but it's a sad thing that the Persians were not having so much of our history recorded. Maybe if they did, after all the wars and empires, the people who lose cannot maintain their history, and usually the winners report the history the way they want, which is fine. But truth doesn't really go away. And so we are thankful today that all this history and accounts that we get are mostly from the Bible. And it is in the book of Ezra, and I'll talk about that. So this is when Daniel talks about at the moment, says the inspired account, the fingers of a man's hand came forth, were writing in front of the lampstand upon the plaster of the wall of the palace of the king. And the king was beholden, the back of the hand was writing. What an awesome sight, a hand appeared out of nowhere. And it wrote down to the king, you better wake up. If you don't look after your folks, your days are numbered. And that is when this expression of writing on the wall started. So I made a small PowerPoint presentation to sort of walk you through that, because sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and maybe it helps. I'm going to talk first about the King Cyrus. He's also, the Cyrus is the word for him in Greek language. The Persian language used that name is Kurosh. And similarly, all the names of that time from the Persian side were sort of changing to Greek names. The next guy after him, Darius, which we will talk about, that's also a Greek name. One of the princesses who married one of the generals of Alexander, her name used to be Ruxana, and she became Roxanne. So those words that we have today, and many of the individuals' names were different in the old days. Cyrus II now, he is the grandson of Cyrus I, who reigned from 549 BC to 530, was a son of Cambyses, whose Persian name is Kambugia, and he was grandson of Cyrus I. People from all walks of life have researched, studied, and written about him, and many artists have performed performances of the writings and poems and all of his times in his honor. Today, I will give you a short glimpse into the recognition, respect, and scholastic publication of non-Persian admirers of Cyrus. The cylinder of Cyrus is an excavated item that we have found, which is of great importance today. It was found more in 1879. And remember, we just saw Cyrus was 549 BC. So many years, almost 2,000 plus years have gone by the time we found this cylinder excavating in the Mesopotamian desert, and it was carried for the British Museum. It today is in the British Museum. The main body of the cylinder discovered, and the picture is on the top right-hand side by Rassam, is a fragment A and a smaller fragment B, which kind of broken today, is a section that was acquired by Niles of Yale University. This fragment has apparently broken off the main body of the cylinder and was not confirmed as part of the cylinder until another research guy from the University of Munster identified it in 1970. So from 18 to 19, another 100 years go by. The permanent place of this original cylinder that was dug up is in room 55 of the British Museum in London. And you can see that in the picture. An exact replica of this same size is installed like this in the front foyer of the United Nations building in New York. Where do we get some information about Kurosh? It is in the book of Ezra, which is mentioned in the Bible. And it also then is different books and paintings and artwork where Cyrus is shown us. And therefore, we know more about it. One of the most interesting places is in the Holy Bible, in the book of Ezra. And of course, I just read a paragraph out of this Daniel's prophecy book. Ezra recounts the liberation of Jews from Babylon by Cyrus. This is the second liberation of Jewish folks from the Holy Land who were taken as slaves. The first one, of course, being from Egypt. But this is the first one that was undertaken by a non-Jewish person. In Ezra, the translation, the King James Version says, now in the first year of Cyrus, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia. And he stirred up the spirit to do what? To liberate his people from captivity. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven had given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he had charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judea, which was the destruction that was done by the Assyrians of destroying the temple of Solomon. Cyrus sent his army with all the material that was stolen from Judea back there and helped the folks to build another next level temple that we know today. Besides the Bible, a lot of the historical accounts are written by Herodotus, who lived around, this is much after Cyrus. This Greek historian, amazingly, was born at a place in Asia Minor, which was a province of Persia. So Herodotus was thus born a Persian subject. Okay, of course, people are born in the right. So what does it matter who is a subject from where? Today, I came from India and I'm a Canadian. That's what happens. Croesus, the king of Lydia, which is today more or less part of southern Turkey or Anatolia, said to Cyrus the king after his defeat by Cyrus before going into Babylon, no man should desire war over peace, as sons bury their father during peace, and fathers bury their sons during war. What a wonderful statement, but a lot of us still don't understand it or acknowledge it. This is in the book of histories. The other guy who talks about Cyrus lots and is well known is from the book that he called Cyropedia. And this is done in the early days. Reverend First for Cyrus was done by Xenophon. And Xenophon's book was written in the early 4th century BC. And he was a student of Socrates. See how closely we are now getting into the Greek school of thought, etc. Many of the founding fathers of USA were inspired by Cyropedia. Thomas Jefferson has a marked copy, which was mandatory read for statesmen and at military colleges. They even use this as information reading at the military college in England. So mostly what was important was to understand and learn the military strategies, the military victories, and not just to win the war, but what to do after that place after the war. How do you maintain the continuity of what he sought as freedom? What is the point in getting freedom if you go back to slavery in 5 years? So he wanted to have it in perpetuity. And of course, Xenophon has one of the best accounts. And I teach my Sunday school kids that he called it Cyropedia as the life of Cyrus. So if your name is Hormuz and I write your life account, it will be Hormuzpedia or Firdoshpedia. Anybody can write like that. So, of course, now we have the encyclopedia and Wikipedia and a whole bunch of other PDFs. The Iranians came to regard Cyrus as the father, the Babylonians as the liberator, and the Jews as the anointed of the Lord, as it is mentioned in the Bible. And to the Greeks, he was the lawgiver. These titles tell you so much about the characteristics of one man. And he was so much to different people in different ways. A century after Cyrus was gone, an admiring Xenophon of Athens wrote an epic account of Cyrus's many leadership principles at war and mostly at peace. The latest book that I am just kind of in the process of reading, studying, and I have included some of the stuff here, is by Billy Wellman, and he's published this book on the enthralling life of the father of the Persian Empire. Cyrus surrounded himself with men from all social classes and nationalities, who he deemed was able in wisdom and decision making, including erstwhile enemies. He even included his enemies in consulting them after they were defeated, bringing them in the management of, because if they were kings before, they knew most about the kingdom better than most other people could. These were his counselors. That was one of the ways Cyrus brought in management into the place after the conquest. They were his counselors, and by the accounts of Herodotus and Xenophon, Croesus of Lydia was one of them after Cyrus conquered his country. Cyrus conquered his capital Sardis, which is part of Anatolia and Lydia, and kept Croesus close and often valued his opinion. A defeated king, he did not just knock his head off. He could have easily done that.
Yeah.
And in those days, when you lose the war,
Yeah.
they didn't even go fetch a rope. It was too far. The sword was close enough.
He was smart, very smart.
But he understood the goodness, qualities of people, and found ways to put them to work so that his empire would last longer. Using Xenophon's Cyropedia, Larry Hedrick wrote for the modern executives, managers, and military officers to learn from Cyrus's strategy, leadership, and wisdom, which was the all-encompassing phrase was the art of good governance. We talk about this art of good governance even today, but look at the massive governance we are doing. Okay, it is, and the book is right there. It's already done 2,500 years ago, and we're still not getting the message. 2,500 years ago, Cyrus the Great of wisdom and virtue created the Persian Empire, conquered Babylon, freed 40,000 Jews from captivity. Of course, I do not know exactly that is the number, or is it 39,900 from captivity, wrote mankind's first human rights charter, and ruled over those he had defeated with respect and benevolence. He looked after everybody in his kingdom as if they were all his children and wanted to make sure they succeed. Because now some people call it this was good political strategy. Maybe he was not such a great guy, but he was a wise guy to make sure he would minimize the number of revolts. But in either case, the result was improvement to the situation that was there. And then I thought I'd give you some other perspective with different stamps from different countries that have acknowledged Cyrus or his cylinder. The Charter of Cyrus, where he orders his army to go into Babylon without killing anybody or without grabbing the property, without burning the place down, leave everybody to their own, leave everybody to follow their own religion. He even rebuilt temples from people of other faiths. See, that is the simple concept in the Zoroastrian religion. Is we as Zoroastrians have the fundamental freedom to decide what we want to do. There is nothing to say, even bad stuff, we are free to do. Of course, we are taught that if you do good stuff, more good will come. If you do bad stuff, more bad will come. Which is what we call the law of Asha, which is really, in simple terms, the law of righteousness. Good will beget good, evil will beget evil. So if I'm supposed to have the freedom to choose, how can I enslave another human being and take his freedom away to choose? Then I'm not a Zoroastrian in my own place. So that then becomes hypocrisy. And we can't do that. So in the country of Iran, in 12th October 1971, they celebrated the 2500th anniversary of the Charter of Declaration. And this was done under the Shah before the present regime. I don't think the present regime ever done something like that. So now these are the cylinder of Cyrus is being kind of symbolized in so many different places and so many ways and emblems and stamps and this and that, the proclamation of Cyrus, etc. This is a stamp that is about his tomb. The tomb of Cyrus at Pasargade in Iran is UNESCO World Heritage Site. And there were stamps issued like that. Now I will show you something interesting. All of the stamps so far are sorry. My fingers did some walking. Back to the drawing board. This one, this is interesting to note. Israel, even today, has published 2 stamps for Cyrus's declaration. They are still respectful and thankful of what Cyrus did to any one of you, of all his people, and let them go to Jerusalem. That is what Cyrus declared. And Israel has put it on one of their own stamps. And if you look at the stamp on the left, there is another stamp with a larger denomination as such. And it's the only stamp in the world that I know, the left one, which is the stamp on a thin sheet of 10-karat gold. Who makes stamps in gold? But Israel is such a thankful people of what they went through and because of the freeing of the Jews from Babylon. Of course, I could be here till tomorrow morning in Babylon but I won't do that. And Cyrus's anniversary, even today, is celebrated on 28th October, which will happen this year at Pasargade, at his tomb. And usually some prayer ceremony is done, and then there is music and dancing and rejoicing.
Yeah.
Even in Iran, it's done today.
That is his tomb.
At his tomb. So now we go to the next guy, Darius. His Persian name is Daryavahush. His short form is also Dara. My middle name is Dara because my daddy's first name is Dara. And we have a tradition to name a child when born, boy or girl, with their own first name, but the middle name is always the father's name. And the last one is the family name. This guy is not the son of Cyrus. No. In those days, dynasties moved around in the family, like whether it's your son, but if you have no sons, then you go to your brother's son. And in today's monarchy, that is done many, many places. But he coming later on after Cyrus, the empire was already set up. He actually added a lot of territory to the empire. But more than that, what he added was the way to run the corporation, if that's what you want to call it. And he was a Shavarsha, meaning ruling over heroes. This is a relief of Darius trying to fight a lion. You see the dagger in his right hand is going in the head of the lion. The dagger in his left hand is going in the tummy. And this was just to prove that those guys are such great heroes that they could take on hand-to-hand combat with the lions. Darius was born to Hystaspes and Rudogone, who were descendants of the Achaemenish family. This Achaemenish word is Persian name, but the Greeks called it the Achaemenid. So today these are all the dynasty of Achaemenians, which is really the Achaemenid people. And Darius the Great was the third king of the Achaemenid dynasty. Although Herodotus' report in the histories has created debate concerning Darius's religious belief, modern scholars consider him a Mazdaean, means the actual name of the Zoroastrian religion is not Zoroastrian. That is the name given to us by other people. The name we recite in our prayers is, we say, I am a Mazda Yasni, or worshipper of wisdom. Mazda is wisdom, Yasni is worshipper. So I'm a Mazdaean, as such, from that term. It's the same kind of understanding, and I wrote by any other name, still goes. Based on the writings on his tomb. And this is where today, after discovering all the tombs of the different kings and what they said, there is no doubt that Darius was 100% Zoroastrian, because in those days, they did not even use the name Zarathustra or Zoroastrian in their inscriptions, but they always used the name of our God, Ahura Mazda, or the Lord of Wisdom. So once the guy in his declaration said, I, Darius, King of Kings, I am king by the grace of Ahura Mazda, I guess then you're stuck. He has to be a Mazda. Throughout the reign of Darius, many lands were conquered and the empire was able to prosper with his brilliant organization. Darius was the successor of Cambyses after Cyrus. He ruled from 522 to 486 BC. I'm sorry I'm using the old terms of BC because I'm not sort of hung up on, I can't use AD and I will have to use AC and all that, or ACE, which was today's follow through, because we even had a meeting on that. The AD word term is anagomin. It is after the name of our Lord, which was Jesus Christ. But we don't worry about it. Well, if you're counting the years from Jesus Christ, so what's the big deal?
It's not a big. I totally agree.
So if somebody gets offended because I'm using terms like that, I apologize in advance. It is not my intent to offend anybody. I'm not good at it. He moved empire eastward to Afghanistan today and India. This is how he made the empire larger. And on the west, he actually went all the way to Egypt. So an empire that runs from Egypt to India is surely not a small one. Which is fine to say and take pride, oh, it was the biggest. But how do you manage such a land? And there was no telecommunication easily, no internet, no cell phones. So how do you manage? How do you take even the king's word or law to all the people? And he figured out how to do that. He was originally a bodyguard of the king, the 10,000 immortals. All the dynasty kings of the Achaemenid dynasty had 10,000 personal bodyguards. And the way it was set up, if any one of them died, another one replaced them. So there were about 10,000 at any given. Continuously. They were a group of Persian soldiers. This group helped bring Darius to power. Now, one of the most notable things is in history, the Persians decided to invade Greece. But they didn't do it for the fun of it. Greeks invaded Persia first, and they burned down the town of Sardis, the capital of Libya. Remember, in Turkey today, the most western part of Turkey. So the Persians said, well, you burn us down, we burn you down, which is not a Zarathustra or Zoroastrian thing to do, but kings are kings. He's notable for a failed invasion of Greece. He went to Greece, attacked them, and at the plains of Marathon in 480 BC, a Greek soldier, Philippides, was given the task to run to the Senate from the battlefield to announce the defeat of the Persians. So he ran up to the Acropolis and he collapsed on the steps after a historic declaration that we have won. Persians. But when he declared it, he died because of exhaustion. And in his memory, we have the marathon race as an Olympic event of same distance today. Why the marathon is so long, if you want to understand the answer, this is where it comes from. Of course, I was lucky to visit Greece. I toured with Russia in the bus over all these lands of marathon, the lanes of Thermopylae and all that. It was really, really interesting to see all the statues and all the writings and the columns and pillars which had so much history on them. Now, what was the big deal about Darius and his management style? What did he do to make sure things worked? Darius is mentioned in the biblical books of Daniel, Haggai, Zechariah, and Ezra. Darius claimed his empire extended from the Sakas beyond the Sogdiana to the Kush. This is north. And from the Sindh, which is part of northwest India at one time today in Pakistan, to Sardis, which is the end of Turkey. Darius refined his provinces, they were called satrapies, and added security measures to reduce revolt. Most of the time, the defeated kings were made governors of the rather than getting. So it's a kind of friendship you and trust you create by which your position is safe. He was responsible for the Persian Empire's capital of Persepolis. He started building the construction of Persepolis. Of course, you can understand, Persepolis is a Greek word. Polis is city, Persis, Percy word. The Greeks called the Persian, Persis, from the land of Persia, which was Persia. And for many other building projects, including he built a canal from the Nile to the Red Sea, which is slightly different in geography than the Suez Canal, but the concept is similar. And of course, you have to understand when you build the canal 2,500 years ago, it's not the same as what you do today. Because a lot of the geography has changed there. You find the best place to do that. He was also renowned for irrigation, which he called the Connect projects, where, remember, we're talking about desert in most of these places. And if you can bloom flowers over there, you've got to do something right. And first thing you need is the water. He introduced a coinage system in Persia. They introduced weights and measures by which trade and commerce developed. Because you no longer have to say, I will buy your 2 goats and give you 10 chicken. And when you give him the 10 chicken, 2 of them are sick. And you do it in coins. Coins are never sick. So what I'm trying to say, it gives a level of trust in the sense of commerce. You know what you're getting. This is a map during Darius' time, which gives you, as you can see from the left, I okay, pointing it out or not yet? No. Go left, the place is Sardis, which is the extent of the end of the royal road, the double line that goes all the way down to Susa, which was the ancient capital. So from Susa to Sardis, a road of 1,500 kilometers was made out of cobblestone. Of course, we didn't have asphalt in those. But that was because horses could travel faster without hurting themselves or losing the horseshoes over there. So lots of things they have done. They're amazingly brilliant, which today if we can incorporate. And of course, as an engineer, I learned this thing and tried to put it in my designs. As if you look at the steps at the Persepolis temple, palace, the steps are, each one is 10 inches high, but it's 4 feet deep. Why would anybody do that? Like, because they used to use the steps. The horses to climb. And horses needed steps that are horizontally downward. So what did he do from this royal road? He set up the very first, I love to say, here that was like, what do we used to say? Any of the courier companies? UPS, Eurolater, Amazon, You only figured it out 2,500 years ago. And today we go chest beating and tell the world how good you are. Nothing. You're just repeating what they did. And you can't even repeat as well as considering the technology of it. So he used to send his messengers, soldiers all over the place with that. Why and how did they communicate with the different lands? So when the king had a decree, you better do this or else, or whatever, that he decided, it was carved into a clay cylinder, which was wet enough to carve in cuneiform or other language, and it was done in a mirror image. No, you can't read it straight, it was the opposite. And then you let that cylinder dry. Many other cylinders, like you saw the picture of the Cyrus cylinder, that's why they did it. What would they then do? The soldiers would take one of the cylinders. Excuse me. The soldier would hop on the horse and away he went spreading the news. And when they came to a town, they got off the horse, they cleared a little piece of land around there. And the people, of course, are waiting, oh, this is Tuesday morning, the king's word will come, things like that. And he took that cylinder and he rolled it on the ground. Then he rolled it, the mirror image became straight. And the people would then read the king's decree, and away the other guy would hop on the horse again and go to the next. This is how email was.
So sophisticated. Yeah.
But it took time for us to get to here. But we need to appreciate and understand that we have all these wonderful things today, because it was started in primitive ways before. You guys, these folks would not have done that initial work, we would not be where we are. That recognition and appreciation makes everything so much nicer. You also have in the map on the right-hand side in the middle, the word Arya. Left to it is Parthia. That was the second dynasty after the Achaemenid was the Parthian. But again, the Persian name for Parthian dynasty was Achaemenish, Ashkani, and the third one was Sasani. The third one was the last one, and 650 after Christ, the third one was defeated by the Arab armies, and there was no longer any Persian kingdom left. And there was so much killing and genocide and all that for all these years that today we have hardly got 200 to 250,000 Zoroastrians.
Yes.
After having the largest empire. Of course, it's nobody's fault but ours. We must have really messed it up. It was in our hands and it went away. What did we do not to preserve it? Because the later kings forgot what Cyrus and Darius taught them, how to manage it, look after them. So they all become, once you become kings, you can do what the hell you like. And that messes up the world. And people are not going to support you for long. This map is very interesting because you can see on the right side is almost India. Left side, you're almost at the end of Turkey. But this word Arya on the right side in the middle is an important word. Arya was the land that was given that name. In our scripture also, we have the name of that called Aryana Baeja. Essentially, it means land of the Aryans, which today is Central Asia. All the stands, Turkestan, Balochistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, all the stands were part of Central Asia, were the Aryan lands. Okay. Please understand, we do not consider that Aryan word that was interpreted by the Nazis later on as superiority complex of any kind. For us, in our scripture, if you go and tell somebody I'm an Aryan, that means I come from Arya. If you say I'm a Canadian, I come from Canada. If you say I'm an Indian, I come from India. You see, it was geography more than any other characteristic that was defined. So it was not a bad word. Now, of course, you tell somebody, hey, Aryan and peoples. When I went to Texas, and I was transferred over there, the Texas people were doing some Bible reading. They do Bible reading. Okay, and they talked about this Aryan stuff. And I said, do you guys understand what is an Aryan? And they said, well, really here. I said, no, don't worry about going back. You're looking at one.
Yeah.
In that sense, I am an Aryan as a descendant of the people. It doesn't make me anything different. I can't jump higher than you or run faster than you just because I'm an Aryan. Doesn't mean anything. It means that you are from that territory or area. So if you have that in mind, the world is more peaceful.
How come the Nazis is taking it over and just resting it as Aryan?
Same reason they pretended to be socialist.
I wish I would have a chance to have a conversation.
There's lots to cover,
Yeah,
I think,
I get it.
right now, but maybe after.
Okay. Take questions up. Darius also invented the concept of the Pony Express, which we know, which was the king soldiers used to take the message and go across. And he wrote about these guys. There is nothing that travels faster and yet is mortal than these couriers. One horse and one man are assigned to each day. Then they take rest, and the next guy takes another horse and goes on. And this is what Darius's edict was, and neither snow or rain, nor heat or dark of night keeps them from completing their appointed course as swiftly as possible. This is the declaration of Darius. This declaration is inscribed on the main wall outside of, his words are inscribed on the front of the main post office in New York City. Today, you can go and do that. In New York, main post office in New York has these words right on the wall. As king of Egypt in the late period, Darius, also known as the lawgiver, meaning making rules that people like to follow, followed by Xerxes, the oldest son of his first son. Now, I'm not going to get into Xerxes because it's a lot of messy stuff. He's the guy who tried to attack Athens to burn it down because they burned down Sardis as a reaction. And then the only difference was the Greeks burned Sardis down when people were there in it. Xerxes gave them 24 hours notice to get out. I'm going to burn this place now. So he burned the building, but not anyone as human. But then, of course, Alexander came back and he took it out on Persepolis by burning it.
Yes.
So it was this so-called exchange of evil that kept going on. Remember we talked about evil brings before you? That's how it was.
Yes.
Darius died October 486 BC. He was aged about 64 at that time. Northwest of Persepolis lies the Hussein Kuh, who is a mountain range and the site of Nast, Jerusalem. This is where his tomb, you see the picture, that is carved in the mountain. Can you understand the concept of the carving is a cross? It's not an X or a circle, it's a cross, like a plus sign. And this is 500 years before Jesus. So these kind of motifs and things were known and went around. Now, tons of this culture happened even in the East, in India, in China, but they had different methods and different things revealed. But right now, we are not talking about that part. But doesn't mean there was not enough in that side either. Every part of the world had culture and development. If you went to the Americas, the South Americas, the Mayans, everybody had their developed institutions. Here carved into a cliff, Darius the Great and his successors are entombed. Only the tomb of Darius the First can be identified beyond doubt by inscriptions. The Oriental Institute of Chicago, because they have a department of Zoroastrian studies. In fact, they even have a museum, different religions, and they have a room on Zoroastrianism where they have, just like the nativity scene that you made, they have the three wise men shown, because it is considered the three wise men were Persian priests. And it's not, okay. I'm sorry, I don't have the New York Times to prove it to you, but even in New York Times, I won't.
Yeah.
Stop that you got. But That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your.
Well, I think we have time for questions and discussion, and I'd like to jump in about what we call what in Jewish history we call the Babylonian exile.
Yeah.
Which we refer to, of course. And then King Cyrus freed the Jews and said they could go back to Judea, to basically Jerusalem, but they didn't all go. And whether there were 40,000 or not, we don't know. There's lots of exaggeration in the Bible. But many of them stayed because they had very good lives. Very good, and they stayed until the until the founding of the state of Israel, until 1948, 49, when a lot of Jewish people did not feel comfortable in so-called Arab lands, and they left. But there was a strong, healthy, thriving Jewish presence in Baghdad. All that time for the Babylonian exile. I have a neighbor down the street, a very good friend, who is from Baghdad, and she stayed on, in fact, after 1948, but she left when Saddam Hussein was the king, and her son was coming up to be the age to that horrible Iran-Iraq war that killed countless people, and she wasn't going to have her son be cannon fodder for that. But there was a strong, thriving Jewish community in Baghdad, absolutely, and they lived very well there.
See, he gave them the opportunity and the means to go back, build the temple, etc., etc. But he couldn't force them to do it, because the moment he would use force, that's not the right thing.
Yes. And so
It has to be without force.
yeah, so many stayed, they had very good lives
Very good.
until recently.
And if you have your subjects who enjoy living in your country,
Yeah.
isn't that the nicest thing you can do as a king?
Yes, it is,
Even if it's political expediency, it is in good direction.
exactly.
Any other question? Anybody? Yes, you have it. You have the question.
Well, I
What's the question?
asked my question, but
I'm sorry, can you please repeat your question?
no, because I joined late in the presentation. I'm fine.
Yeah, but if you join late and you miss it, I don't mind explaining it again. So please ask. Why the Nazis?
Yeah.
What was it about the Nazis that they took this quote unquote Aryan business? Apparently, you can explain it many ways. But it is understood that in those days, the Aryan culture, the Aryan people, and when you say Aryan, please understand, we are now saying Indo-Iranian Aryans. It includes ancient Indo people, which is the Rigvedic time from the Vedas. They were developed also that way, and they are also known as Arya in the scriptures of the.
Yeah, I just wonder why the Nazis.
But that's what I'm going to have. Because that was the place that most of the mental intelligence, intellectual development came from, and those guys were considered by some people as the superior ones. So if the Nazis wanted to tell the world that we are, what label would they pick?
Yeah.
Well, they got something ready-made available, say that we are also Aryan. They try to prove their Aryanness by features, by development. They have little cutouts made that they used to put on people's face. And if you didn't fit that, you're not an Aryan.
Not that Hitler would have ever fit that, because he did not.
No, if they wanted Hitler to be their main, they would have just stretched the image.
Yeah.
Made it out of spandex. What I'm saying is when people are willing to promote whatever they want to consider right, they can be willing to go to any extent to do it. Honest, truthful or not, it doesn't matter, because the goal is what they want to achieve. But what I can understand, the one single thing that he missed about the Aryan people from the Zoroastrian Muslim religion is our freedom to choose. How do you think that it says Aryans are this only and that only, where the others are supposed to have freedom to choose? You have the right to choose to call yourself an Aryan. I can't stop you. But if that helps you, I'm not going to get in your way. What does it matter ultimately?
They made it up. They made up the entire history.
Majority of things today, even in the world, is made up.
Oh, I know.
And
I know. And
with more and more faster communication, internets, where is that? Now we are going into artificial intelligence and all.
Yes.
The technology is giving us fantastic opportunity to do good. But with the same technology, we can also do bad. There was a time when I was a little boy, visited my mom's and dad's place of birth town.
Mhm.
My grandmother and everybody still lived there. Every day in the evening, the grand people would cook the meal early evening. Of course, in those days, no electricity that much.
Yeah.
So they would finish their meals and what do they? They go to the veranda and sit and talk across to each other. All the old ladies. So Sally, what did you do today? So Sarah, like that. And they would first start with recipes, and I cook this, and then of course the start of so and so's daughter is fooling around with so and so's son. Gossip.
Gossip.
But that gossip stayed there on that street. Today, if one of my grandmas puts it on email and sends it out to 100 people, 100 send to another one. That gossip was stirred. And this is the wrong we have done with it. But you cannot, somehow we have also learned that you have the freedom of speech. So
Mhm.
you can say anything and it's okay. Even journalism has changed, even in my life. Where journalists were only supposed to report what they confirmed as true. Today, journalists will report, Firdosh said this. That is true to them. And but Firdosh can say all the lies he wants. They do not.
So, any questions from our Zoom audience?
I have
I
a
hope
question.
you see.
Okay, please.
Yes, sir.
What did they use for tools to build a large canal from one body of water to another? As was mentioned in your presentation, what did they have
Yes.
for tools?
Yeah, for the tools, you have to understand, obviously, they had relatively primitive tools in the early days. But you also have to understand that relatively labor was available cheaper and in large numbers. So where you could use 10,000 people to dig up a desert, today we do it in a different way. We can't find 10,000 people, but we can find 1,000 people, 1,000 backwards or machinery to do that. So it was all hand, all human, and the animal power. Ox, horses, to pull the stone and the carts and all that. That was done. And the Egyptians built the pyramid long before Darius built the canal. And those pyramid structures were even more complex with all the tombs inside. How it had done. In fact, if you try and understand the early Egyptian, you will be amazed at what are all the things they have found out that we don't even know. Which today we consider great when we do it. But hey, they lead us to it for 4,000 years. And more excavations, more and more research is being done. It is really shaking some fundamental concepts of human understanding. That those folks were. Like, look at it today. We talk about 4,000 years of this and 5,000 years of that. And suddenly we excavate a place in southern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. And they find out that the stone was pulled from the quarry, cut, chipped, brought and made a temple with carvings on it 10 to 12,000 years ago, when they did not have any trained animals to pull the rock. Human beings did.
Aliens.
And to add to the concept, if you can figure how the Suez Canal was dug between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, it was all human being with very primitive axes
Yeah.
and hauling the dirt by hand out of the coast. So it is, yes, that's what you're saying, it's just very primitive. But it was the force of people,
Human power.
human power.
Yeah.
that
Well, when I
was-
was growing up in engineering, in India, there was a big dam, power station, like dam to be built. Nowadays, we have options. You can build a concrete dam, like it's done in most of the places. Old dam is like that. Or you can have human power dam, which is essentially called the earthen dam. So you collect the earth from so many mountains and all that around you by human power, fill it in the basket and drop it over there. Basket after basket after basket, and now you have an earthen dam. So when in India, in the north, there was a place called Bakranangal. The Bakranangal Dam was, the government of India had to make a decision, and they decided to go earthen dam, even when they could have made it into a concrete dam faster and quicker and stronger. But they said, no, where are we going to put this 5 million people? We need to put them to work. Otherwise, if they have nothing to do, they mess around in the city, robbery goes up, people have to survive somewhere or the other. Is management of the human resource. We are all today thinking we have a department of human resources. We have no idea what they did with 5 million people in building an earthen dam. Human resources.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yes, we shouldn't use the word primitive. We should not use that word.
Why?
Well, because it's sophisticated to me, it's incredibly sophisticated. The conception of it, work had to be done by hand. To conceive of it, to see the possibility, that's very sophisticated thinking.
I hear primitive by any other name is primitive.
I
Just like the horse. See, again, now we get into this word hang-ups about the can't say this. And my daughter corrects me all the time. Of course, she's the teacher. And now that she's the teacher, she can correct that. But before that, the dad could correct her.
well,
But I keep telling her, look at my intention, look at my thought,
okay.
look at what I'm trying to say. So when you don't, there was one time I was trying to take her class. And if you look at Zarathustra's teaching, what is the opposite of wisdom?
Ignorance.
No,
No, what?
ignorance is not the opposite of wisdom.
Okay.
Ignorance is the opposite of knowledge, knowing and not knowing.
Okay.
So knowledge, the application of knowledge is wisdom. So what is the application of ignorance? Stupidity. In Zoroastrian religion, you don't have you have the freedom to be stupid. Anybody can be whatever they want, but you have to pay the price for that. The consequences has to come. But you can't say because I'm a Zoroastrian, I'm not stupid. There's no way you can do that because every human being goes through that growth phase. So let's say, and that is what Zarathustra said. He didn't say don't be stupid. He said you cannot be stupid and call yourself a Zoroastrian.
But he said you cannot use the word stupid.
But my daughter, Dad, you cannot do this for stupid in front of my kids. Well, I said, if any of your kids behave in a stupid way, it's the honest thing to say. Because please understand, I strongly believe there are times in my life when I have done stupid things. What makes us think that we cannot do stupid things? Things happen. The important thing is to recognize what you did, figure out, hey, this is a stupid thing, and promise yourself never to do it.
Absolutely.
That is what the teaching is all about. Whether it is stupid or not is important. Are you willing to promote and keep it? So that is what I'm saying. When you insist on being ignorant, but you can be ignorant, nothing wrong. I wasn't born with the dictionary in my head. But we learn all our life. And as we learn more.
We do.
Etc. etc.
We do. Thank you.
Because to me right now, if I would do a stupid thing and somebody would call me, hey, why are you doing a stupid thing or are you stupid? I wouldn't get upset. I would recognize that what I did was stupid. That's good to know. And decide not to do it again. Now, if I don't have that recognition, how am I going to decide not to do it again? Think about it. There is some intelligence in that also.
Very. Thank you. Anyone else? Mackenzie, I know you weren't expecting to come in today. You need to go.
Oh, I was just
I
correct.
hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, good.
It's really interesting, just, more of a comment than a question, which is worse than you can say,
Yes.
thank you. But it's really interesting how they had the concept of the cylinders and rolling it on the ground and getting all that printed. And didn't make that one last leap to either putting it on cloth or putting it on paper and getting to the printing press, essentially. There's just that gap there that wasn't quite crossed.
But even in the cylinder itself, you know why this cylinder you saw? It's not a cylinder, but really like a football. Its diameter in the middle is larger than the diameter at the ends. Notice that? You want me to run the?
Oh, no, I know this, yeah.
Why is that cylinder like that? That's technology. When you roll the cylinder on the ground, it pushes the dirt away and the lettering does not come clear. So when you change the shape and the dirt starts to move away, you still have a portion of the cylinder that digs in the ground and gives you the word. This is
Brilliant.
This is how the motion of the dirt happens. So smaller cylinders are fully cylindrical, no problem. There are thousands of cylinders that we have, say, but as it gets larger and larger, it becomes like an oval, tapered at the end.
Very cool.
Now they figured this out.
Can I stop the recording?
I just have a quick question.
Oh, Ursula, please.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Of the two Persian kings that you talked about, Cyrus and Darius, which one would you consider the best? If you had to,
Different reasons I would consider each one good, and then it's all up to us to decide. Because when you talk about best, you have to again pick a subject in which he's the best or not. Was he a good civil engineer? Was he a good military general? You know what I'm saying? You can't. But the important thing you have to understand is, obviously Cyrus has to be the kind of better guy, because he was there first and he set up his foundation on which Darius could build. If Cyrus would not have done what he did, Darius probably not have done what he did. So now you pick, is the first one that you would like to have first, or is it the second one you would have first?
okay, thank you.
Sorry, I don't have a straightforward answer, and I'm not trying to cop up. I'm trying to explain my understanding.
I just want to see what you said. Thank you.
I mean, are you going to accept that Columbus came here first, or did Firdosh come here first? And who was the greater one of the two?
Well, we know.
It is the time, the place, and the way they do it. What are the options available to them? What are the circumstances? A lot of kings have lost battle. Xerxes, the guy after Darius, when he tried to attack Greece again, he sent 1/3 of his navy to go around the pass, mountain pass, wherein, you know the story of 300 Spartans, right? Not the crazy film, don't worry about that. That's all comic book. He sent 1/3 of his army, naval ships, to circle on the other side, and next day when the army attacked, he would get the Greeks from the back. Now, pincher movement, which is called like you catch the army from both sides, that has been done in every battle. It's a simple battle strategy, get your enemy from both sides. So now he's busy wondering which side he can fight, and that is how they lose the concentration, the focus, the willingness, and they give up. Now he sent these ships, and in the nighttime, of course he could not control it, there was a massive storm, and 1/3 of his ships were sunk in the storm. When he found out in the morning, why those guys not come to help my folks from this side? What were they doing? Were they sleeping around all night? When he found out, you know what he did? Of course, that was what kings could be. They could be stupid par excellence. He told his soldiers to whip the sea for destroying my ships. How stupid you have to be to whip the water. But he's the king, he can do anything like this.
Well, the Spanish Armada, same thing.
Yes, yeah,
Spanish Armada would have taken over, they would have ruled.
if you are talking about interesting stuff, this navy that the stupid king destroyed him now. I'm not blaming him for destruction and storms and all that. Why does he have to use his soldiers to whip the sea? Did you know that?
People.
Pardon?
Better than whipping people, I guess.
And all around.
No. And it was a storm that did it. If people would have done it, he would have whipped the sea. That who was the chief admiral of that navy? That is interesting. I'll impart that information. To me, that is far more interesting to learn.
So do you know?
It is the
Okay.
first naval fleet commander. Now, whatever fleet, I'm not saying you have 7 ships and I have 9. Let's not worry about that. But the whole, and the Persian fleet was the largest one in those days. Right? It is the largest army, and the admiral of that navy was a lady. Even today, we have not had women that are in complete charge of a fleet or navy No, has had that. And her name was Artemis.
Beautiful.
And when he, after doing this mess, he had wanted to make another mistake, and he gets his navy to go into the island, around island, those areas, the Battle of Salamis. Look it up on the Google, and you will see. Artemis begged with him, don't, you'll mess up our ships. And of course, the king, nobody tells me what to do. I have to do what the heck.
Mm.
And it was a simple, common sense thing that Artemis told him. Don't be stupid. The Greeks will lure you, tempt you to go. First, they will attack and then turn around and go back. So now you have to understand, ships in those days, you did not have to turn around to go in the other. You just have to row the other way. You understand? It was so easy to turn around. An 180 turn was this way or this way. It was so simple. And she said, you send in our ships behind those guys. Then they get further and further into the harbor, the shore, and the land under the ships is shallower and shallower. Our ships are much larger and bigger, and therefore they sink more. The Greek ships were not that large, they did not sink that much. So there were areas in that waters, that sea, the Salamis, where a Greek ship could still float, but the Persian ships ran aground. And then they come back and fight the battle. And now the Persian ships could not move. And a ship that does not move is not worth the ship to be on.
Well, thank you.
And Artemis told Xerxes so much, don't be an idiot. You ruin your, he didn't listen, and that's what happened.
So that's a sign of a not so smart leader who does not listen to his general. Now, anyone else? I think we could stop the recording now, Guy. That's great. Thank you.
I tell the story to my kids in the Sunday school class.